Some headlight bulbs here with four-hour jobs. Some of the Volkswagens and stuff like that. It's just really dumb.
Some engineer ought to get slapped upside the
Mhm.
head. That just is stupid.
Yep.
I did on my wife's car, and I had to go underneath, take the tire off, go underneath, take all the rivets out, and do it that way.
Yep. It ought to be something, if you can get a ticket for it, for driving down the road with a headlight out, it ought to be something that it's a law, but it needs to be something you can do on the roadside with no tools.
Right, yeah.
So that's why I let my local, local repair shop take care of that stuff.
Pass that back down to me.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
Alright, well, it looks like it's 10 o'clock. We will call the Courts and Public Safety Committee to order. Are you ready?
I am.
I should have checked with you first, sorry. Could I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Erickson?
Here.
Mr. Morris?
Here.
Mr. Hardy?
Here.
Mr. Walker?
Here.
Mr. Beggs?
Here. With that, I'll entertain a motion to approve minutes from January 12th.
I'll make that motion. Hardy.
Support Walker.
Alright, all those in favor?
Aye.
Say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Minutes are approved. Any changes to the agenda? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll make that motion, Morse.
I'll second Hardy.
Hardy with a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Any public comment for the Courts and Public Safety Committee? Alright, hearing none. Prosecutor Bizon, consideration for criminal case management system from ARPA funds.
So, my time here, I've always tried to be really fiscally responsible regarding any requests we make. We try to keep our budget to a minimum, and unfortunately today I've got two things to bring before various boards. So our case management system. So what we use right now is called the Adult Case Tracking System, and they have a second system called Juvenile Case Tracking System. We use them to find our files. They track our cases, track our numbers, things like reports to the board, and it is an essential tool in every prosecutor's office across the state. The state has for decades provided this system, but the operating system is no longer supported. It's functioning out there. It's a security risk as far as internet hacking. Even if we were to stay with it, it's going to be not supported. They are going to pull their support within a couple years, 2 or 3 years of it, and they've given us notice that we're going to have to find something else. The problem is that's going to cost them. The Prosecutors Association put on a demonstration involving the 3 leading proponents of a system to replace our system, and the one that we looked at and we think is most appropriate, most cost efficient, is the Carpel system. The other 2 systems, one of them is just not particularly good, and the other one is the one that our friend of the court is trying to work with right now, which we see all kinds of problems. We think that they have all kinds of add-ons that we don't need, but that they kind of insist to make it work right. So we looked at the Carpel. We got a quote from Carpel. We cut down things that they offer, but we don't need. Like, we do not need to be connected to the court. We are right down the hall from the court. Anything we need to do with the court, we can just walk over there. We can send emails, we can do things like that. So we don't need to spend extra money on some items. So we've really pared it down to what the core functions of the case tracking system need to be. We've presented the quote, I believe, that's been disseminated. I know we gave it to admin. This is an absolute necessity. It is a necessary item to function in our world, and we believe that this is the best system out there for us.
And I can tell you, in my experience with Clare County, we went through the bid process looking for the right software. Our prosecutor's office did, and she chose Carpel as well. and said that, it's the best one out there.
It appears that there's kind of three choices right now. There's some counties that are limping along with the adult case tracking, and I know we've talked to Amy, and Amy told us that she does support us getting this new system. Our current system is a problem, and if we were to if we were to limp along with it, things that we all have to be worried about right now, like internet security. It does create a problem in that we are looking. There are some counties that have gone off on their own and gotten their own systems with various input, but the system that most prosecutor offices and courts seem to like is this Carpel system. It is my understanding, I don't want to speak for anybody else, but I know we've had talks with the undersheriff, and the undersheriff also agreed that for their purposes this would be our best replacement. And I don't want to put words in the sheriff's mouth, but that's my understanding from the undersheriff, that this would be our best choice. It does allow us to integrate with various law enforcement agencies depending on what systems they're using, and has some very useful applications in that regard of how they'll be able to communicate with us.
Mr. Beggs, if I may.
Yep.
Just a quick question, on the line item here, there's one that says data conversion to be determined, and it has a $7,500 charge. Is that an approximation for converting the old data?
Yes, I think they quote high just to make sure you're covered.
Okay.
But they do have to spend all the time taking our data from old system and converting it. So yeah, that's an estimate. I'm assuming they're quoting high, but I haven't specifically asked them that question.
Okay,
I'm
thank you.
assuming that.
Also, I should probably let you know that if this is approved and we move forward with this, they've given us an estimate that we would be up and running and live in 2024. So it's a lengthy process.
Lead time, yep.
What do we use in Newaygo and Ludington?
No, I can still use ACT.
Yeah, I believe both of them are still on ACT. They will be kicked off of ACT and have to come up with something. But to my knowledge, they're using ACT still.
Still on the
Yeah.
old system?
For now.
Yeah.
Next week, I'm at a prosecutors conference, and this is one of our items that we are going to be discussing is replacement options. This isn't a matter of you may want to. That they are telling us they are shutting down the ACT JCT.
Yep. You know, I don't know if you know, you said it probably wouldn't be implemented until 24. Does that maintenance fee then kick in after it's done? I'm getting a nod back there. So
Yes. Yeah, I actually asked her that. She called me the other day and I asked her that specific question. I said, so what happens is if we sign the contract for the program, they give us like half down to start, and then they said they give me a bunch of homework to do in the meantime so the transition goes smoothly, so now I have a bunch of work to do in the meantime to get ready for it. And then she said once we go live, they get a final invoice, which is that annual fee and the final bill.
Okay.
And then the annual fee does go from the start
From
time.
that date, okay.
Yes, or to
Thank
answer
you.
the specific question.
Yep.
Yes.
I couldn't tell you what software program to use, one or the other. You know, the document and the presentation we had was excellent, and I thank you for that. The only thing that I would ask is, I'm in favor of approving this. I have no problems with it at all. But if you're going to a conference in the next couple days, let's not order this system or put it in until you find out at the conference that there might be some other thing that will work for you or something would be better.
So I agree with what you're saying, but I would tell you that this has been well, I'm saying it's on the agenda because they are telling every prosecutor across the state that this is coming. It has been talked about for the last year and a half, and the vast majority of prosecutors are choosing Carpel. There are a couple people that are making different decisions for whatever reason they're making it. I don't know. This seems to be the most popular choice among prosecutors and courts. It seems to be the most user-friendly. It seems to be the most on point for what we do. To give you an example, one of the competitors, they seem to have tried to do like everything in law. And so there's like this all this stuff out there. Carpel really seemed to focus in on what the prosecutor's office needs to do, and seems to have focused, and this does appear to be the best choice. We did look at some basic pricing on stuff. This is the quote we got, but this will be the most cost effective, and the one that by all accounts counties such as Kent County is using this. Is Otsego using it?
Otsego is
Not yet.
They know they need to change. I will tell you, Kent County demonstrated it for us at their office manager conference, and it's a good system. It's a very good system.
You know, and I get it, and I agree on the value of having it integrated with the law enforcement agencies, but I'm sure that's gonna come at a price too.
It will. Yeah,
But,
that's actually one of the reasons why we're not asking for integration with the courts, because we don't think that cost is worth it. When I'm in my office and the court is 15 steps maybe, we don't think that's worth it. However, for law enforcement it might be, and that has not been determined yet. But with
So courts are transitioning from JAS to my court.
Yep.
They do not support my court yet at all. So we could, if we even wanted to integrate with JAS, it'd be a waste of money, because the courts are switching over. And so we took that right off that's just waste of money. Law enforcement, how it integrates with them is they have, and it's in that quote there, they have what's called an external access. So what they do is they have a way that they log into our system, but it's not into our system, it's external. They upload their data, their information, and then it goes to our system and shows we have a referral from law enforcement. And that's how they access it. So, like for instance, if the deputies are working on the weekend, all they have to do is log in with their password, they put their information in, it'll show Joe or Kevin, hey, you got a referral. They'll be able to pull it up, review it, do a warrant, ship it right to them. And so that's how they access it.
Does this proposal include the training for your office?
yes, that is part of the proposal.
Okay, thank you. So, is there any thought of having our IT person involved with some of those things so she understands how it works?
I believe so. We have talked to her, and we definitely try to keep Amy in the loop on everything we're doing with our computers so that she's not surprised. And I know she's taken a look at it, and she's told us that she does agree that this is necessary. I believe you've kind of looked at the system and think that it's a good system.
Yeah.
And yeah, so to the extent that she needs to be involved, she will be involved.
And please don't take this as a micromanagement thing.
No.
But it would be nice if Amy had a phone number and name for something, if something went down at our location, and she knew who to call if there was a problem.
I 100% agree with you, and we try very hard to respect Amy's time and resources and not unload on her on things that are beyond the pale.
Thank you for your due diligence on the job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Phil, did you have?
Yeah, and she answered it, so.
Okay.
But I do wanna say, I support it as well, because, I mean, the program that you have is probably, it sounds like it's antiquated, that has holes security-wise, we've already had an issue with that here, we don't wanna have more of that. I know it's expensive, I don't like it, that way, but it's cost of doing business, so.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for presenting.
So, so it looks like the total one-time costs, so we're looking at about a $50,000 roughly for the first year.
Yeah,
And that'll cover, that'll also cover.
51,150.
Okay.
And that total includes 3 scanners as well for their office, so
Yep.
that they can
And
scan
then
the
the maintenance
documents.
past that point is $7,050.
So it's $7,000 reoccurring.
Annually.
Okay,
Yeah.
that seems pretty reasonable. And then you talked about the court's information. Is there, not having the systems that integrate, is there going to be clerical redundancy where the courts have to re-enter information?
At this time, yes.
Okay.
As Heather was saying, there's 2 parts to this. One, okay, so if we integrate with the police have different schedules than we do.
Yeah.
Just use the sheriff as an example, and I think the state police are pretty similar. There's the 4 on 4 off. So a lot of times they're doing work and a lot of the busy stuff happens at night, they're doing a lot of work when we're not open.
Yep.
They do have access to call us as needed, but a lot of stuff happens when we're not there. This would allow them to do things and get stuff to us while we're closed, whereas with the courts, we're also open at the same time, and as I said, it's about 15 steps. But the other part of it is, as Heather said, and I apologize, I forgot about this part, but our district court is currently using JIS. JIS is being shut down, and it's going over to this other system called MyCourt. Right now, the system does not integrate with MyCourt. So for the time being, yes, there will be some clerical redundancies of them having to re-input some things that have been put in our system.
Sure. So is there integration for Carpel to MyCourt?
Not at this time.
Is it planned? Have they really said?
I don't know if they have that planned yet.
And being MyCourt, I'm guessing it's a state program, so
Yes.
the likelihood of integration is probably slim. Just from a layman's.
If I were going to guess, just pure, and this is pure speculation, my guess is, so our circuit court was one of the pilots for MyCourt. So we have it upstairs but not downstairs. I suspect that as MyCourt gets rolled out across the state, that it will, that Carpel will do something. They seem to be a very progressive, thoughtful company, and they will probably do that because
Sure.
they integrated with the current system that is the standard.
Yep.
It's just this new one's new, that MyCourt is new, and I think that's down the road.
But if Carpel becomes a big enough player in the state, then there's more leverage for that integration. Likely.
It's my understanding they're already in like 20 some counties.
Okay.
They are probably going to be the leader in this.
Yep. Just because data entry is such a time, it takes a lot of time.
We're going to talk about that in my next presentation.
Oh,
Yes.
okay, all right.
You are absolutely 100% correct.
So, you know who pays for the MyCourt? Is it the state pays for that?
That would be a court question. I don't know. I know that our circuit court was a pilot program for it. So typically, I know at the prosecutor level, I don't want to speak at the court level, at the prosecutor level, when they roll out these new things, which the last one was a cloud-based ACT system, which completely failed. That was the attempt for the replacement of the ACTs. When they did that, they found X number of large counties like Wayne County, X number of medium counties like Muskegon is considered a medium-sized county, and then X number of small counties. We were not part of that pilot project for that, and just in this one, so I'm assuming that the courts do something similar, and our court was picked as one of the model courts for the MyCourt. We do have some access to that, and it's a nice system. I do think down the road they'll probably integrate. It's not there yet, and as Heather said, it would not be worth spending money to integrate to a system that's going to be going away.
Great. Okay, so moving forward, we'd like to hear if you learned anything new at this this conference you're going to, and but it seems like this is the correct direction at this point. So, should we plan on coming back to this at our next court and public safety?
Mr. Beggs, I am comfortable with approving this with all of the documentation we
Okay.
have
I am
and
too.
the work that they've
Yeah.
done. But just with, if the prosecuting attorney finds out at his conference that this may not be the best, you know.
If I find out anything, I will notify the board
you know,
immediately.
He can come back to us.
Yep.
If he doesn't find anything,
Then we
let's
just
get
go
it
through.
started and make it happen.
Yeah,
Okay.
I agree.
So looking to take action on this today, and then
Yep.
if he gets new information, we can retool.
We
Sure.
agree with that.
Okay.
I feel very comfortable going forward with it.
I agree.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments?
And, you know, as long as we're talking ARPA dollars, we really probably ought to get a grip on how many ARPA dollars went where and how much is left. I've got that. Maybe we can get copies to everybody for the next meeting.
I have it, I can email it to everybody.
I think paper copies are better than email.
Thank, Thank you, Joe.
Yep, thanks. All right, with that, any public comment before we close, courts and public safety? Hearing none, we are adjourned.
Let me know when you're ready, Amy. All right, I call to order the Personnel and Health and Human Services Committee. We get a roll call, please.
Mr. Erickson?
Here.
Mr. Beggs?
Here.
Mr. Hardy?
Here.
Mr. Walker?
Here.
Mr. Morris?
Here. Can I entertain a motion for approval of the minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve.
And I'll support it, Walker.
Thank
Do
you,
we
Mr.
have
Beggs and
two?
Mr. Walker.
Do we have 2 dates there to approve, is that?
Yes.
Yes.
I make a motion to approve both.
Yeah, the
Agreed.
12th of
Agreed.
January and November 10th.
Agreed, Walker.
I did have one thing that I highlighted here in the second one, the 12th. Oh, goodness gracious, where is it? Now I lost it. Under agenda items, the third one, it says Chairperson Morse inquired if the Sheriff's Department jail was used completely each year. Trying to remember what that was supposed to say.
Budget.
Budget,
Yeah. If the Sheriff's Department jail budget was used completely each year. So if you just add that, that'd be great. Does that meet your approval, Mr. Beggs
Yep.
and Mr. Walker?
Sounds great.
Okay. Any other conversation about the minutes? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say the same. Motion carries. Any recommended changes to the agenda? Being none, can I entertain a motion for approval?
I'll make that motion, Hardy.
I'll second.
All right, Mr. Hardy and Mr. Beggs, thank you for first and seconding that motion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed the same. The motion does carry. Time for public comment for the Personnel and Health and Human Services Committee. Being none, Prosecutor Bison, if you come on up and talk about your additional staffing proposal for victims' right position.
Thank you for letting me be here. It's been a long time.
You're welcome.
All right. Okay, so both proposals that we've put before you, I want to say that Heather in my office has spent a lot of time in putting those together. We looked this over, and we think we were talking about data entry in the last case. So I can for sure take you back to 2007 when I started in the office, and I have some knowledge of stuff that happened before that, but not an entire history. I do know that when my former boss, Terry Shaw, was the prosecutor, his time went back into the late 80s, and then prior to that, the former Judge Montan was the prosecutor. And at one time it was even a part-time position when Judge Montan, I believe, became the prosecutor. There are no longer any part-time prosecutors in the state of Michigan. They are all full-time positions. There are different ways that gets managed, but like here, this is the entirety of what we do. You go back to the days of Judge Montan and Terry Shaw. For a long time, it was just them and the office manager, legal secretary. I'm not sure what the position was called back then, but it was one person. I think probably many of you know who that person is. She was a great worker, and I enjoyed working with her for many years. Around sometime in the 80s, they added the 4D position. That is a responsibility of the prosecutor's office as well. And then sometime around 1998, they added a second legal secretary. Let's go back to the 90s, even the early 2000s. There were different ways of getting evidence. police cars would often have, if they had in-car cameras, they were VHS tapes. We would get 2 VHS tapes, one for us, one for the defense, and we'd hand them out. Photographs were taken different ways. There, some departments use Polaroids or other instant film type devices. Others would use film cameras, and I'm not sure, because I didn't live here then, I'm not sure what the photo processing was. Looking at old files, they would get printed out photographs, and they'd get multiple copies, and they'd hand them out to the defense. We are now living in the digital age, so things have changed. Whereas in the past, we would get a report, we'd get multiple, the police were responsible for giving us multiple copies of reports. We would get everything we needed, and we would just hand them out to other people. Now, due to various costs, we are now printing reports for most of the departments. When the sheriff's office gives us reports, a lot of times they will reference photographs or other evidence, and depending on what it is, like photographs, we will go into their case stuff and we're printing them out. So we are incurring a lot more time involved in preparing cases, and we have an absolute obligation to disseminate the information that is available. One of the interesting things now is we are now dealing with digital evidence. We are having several departments. The sheriff's department now has WatchGuard in their vehicles, and that is digital, cloud-based. I believe it's cloud stored. And there's different ways that we can get that. The state police have that same system, but they also have body cameras. And not only do the state police, but so does Pentwater, the Village of Shelby. I'm forgetting some. Hart PD has body cameras now. So to give you an example, what might have been just some paperwork before, we recently had a slide off that's gotten some attention. A slide off, and an officer wrote a ticket. Going along with a ticket, it's just a simple crash and having to do with the obligation to report it to police. We had 5 digital videos that had to be processed out of what would have been in the 80s or 90s a simple ticket and some dispute over what happened. But the officer has it, it's available. We have an obligation to get it and disseminate it. And that is, everything is taking more time than it used to. We also, as we've talked about before, our case numbers have gone up. So across the board, the volume has risen, and then per case, our obligation on each case has expanded exponentially due to what we have to do now in order to get the evidence, process the evidence, disseminate the evidence. The time spent per case is growing. The legislature has expanded what are and are not victim crimes. They've increased our responsibilities on victim crimes. We are dealing with a lot of things that we didn't have to deal with before, or in volumes that we didn't have to deal with before. We are dealing with more tickets and citations, which are now handled with the officer writes the ticket. A lot of it's handled electronically. And then my staff has to hunt down reports and the video evidence, any other evidence that's available. We are dealing with more misdemeanors, we are dealing with more felonies. And even on the felonies, there's just more evidence. We are dealing with case classifications that we haven't had to deal with before. The legislature expanded the ability to set aside convictions, which people have different opinions, but the fact is they did it. Now we have to deal with it. We are dealing with more motions to set aside than we have ever had to deal with before. We are dealing with more. We're dealing with a lot of personal protection orders, which, again, we're getting. Aside from the digital evidence that the police have, if you think about just think about how many people you know that have cameras in their home. So now, every time something happens at somebody's house, we have people who have outdoor cameras and indoor cameras, and we have to try to get that information. We have to process it, download it, disseminate it. And this is happening in just about every case. There aren't very many people who don't have a Ring doorbell anymore. and so just with every case, it's exponentially growing. I think that Heather did a great job of putting together an explanation of what their daily duties are, what their moment-to-moment duties are, and it has just become readily apparent that it would be very beneficial to making sure that we do what we need to do if we had one person who was tasked with victims' rights and let the office manager be the office manager. Both duties are full-time jobs, and both are. Heather's putting in a lot of hours. I would like to get her some time off if possible, and right now it's just not possible because there's just stuff coming in every day. The way our office is set up, that 4D person is not a criminal legal secretary. Their entire job is doing support, establishment and support, and that is all that person does. So we have two people. I have two legal secretaries. Heather, who's doing office management and victim rights, and our legal secretary, who is doing the work that is laid out in the presentation. We have not even had time to prepare for if one of them is off, how do we cover that person who's not there, because now we've got one person doing 3 or 4 jobs instead of 2 people doing 3 jobs. And it's just become readily apparent that this is fundamentally necessary for our office.
Mr. Morris?
Yes, Mr. Walker.
Point's very well taken, but I see this just as the tip of the iceberg. With my background in law enforcement and all the years that I've spent out in law enforcement administration, with the changes that we are going to see at the state and federal level on reform for law enforcement, this is just a tip of the iceberg compared to how many regulations we're going to see come down. And I see them coming down very, very hard on the digital evidence. Every department will be providing that digital evidence, and I'm hearing from people that I've worked with in the field who are in administration now, one of the biggest things that's going to be coming down now is the privacy issue with the digital evidence. When police officers walk into somebody's house with their body cameras going, and that's going to come back on the prosecutor's office whether that gets released or not.
Yes.
Because the bad guys are going to be wanting to know what's inside that house or somebody, and they're going to be looking at it, and it's going to make even more work for your office.
That is absolutely true, and a lot of prosecutors are asking for and getting 1 or 2 people to handle digital evidence as well. Right now we're not asking for that. We are asking to separate the office manager and victim rights person. But you're right, that is, and there are counties where they're discussing, for example, lien traffic. It's not uncommon. Some of you have worked with the police, and you know stuff gets broadcast over the radio. Some of that information is debatably private, and some offices are working on how to redact information. We do not have a person to do that. We don't have the software or technology to do it. But you're right. That is a coming issue.
And the privileged information that's on lien, the 911 board went through that when I was on the board about the dissemination of that information. And I will tell you, it was such a simple thing as information that was gathered from the lien, when it was put into the police report in the log for that incident, that information got disseminated to fire departments where they could read it on their monitors in their fire vehicles.
Yes.
You and I know that's a violation of lien. You can't do that because you know there were issues. There was some. It's evolving, and it's not going to end real quick. Is what I'm saying. And the other thing that I looked at was the economics of this. That there's a possibility that some of the cost of this, if it's a full-time position, can be passed on to the state so we can get reimbursed for it?
Currently, we are partially reimbursed for the victim rights. We are in discussion with the state on how we get that fully reimbursed. There's no guarantee, and I don't want to represent something that is not true. I cannot promise you that they're going to give us more money, but we have Tracy Hogan is our contact at DHS, and she manages the grant from the DHS standpoint. We have started discussions with her on if this is approved, whether or not they would give us more grant money. We are pushing for it, but I cannot stand here today and promise that.
But you're at least looking at it.
We are pushing for it. Beyond looking at it, we are pushing for it. I just can't promise it.
And again, excuse me, again, this comes down to that key term that we've all heard so many times called unfunded mandates. We're gonna get them. Somebody's gonna have to bear the cost. There's no way around it.
They currently receive $23,000 toward that position for a part-time position right now. But we provided the information, Stacy provided the information to try and get the another portion of that covered, so.
And Mr. Walker, I agree with everything you're saying about what's coming. Right now, we believe that this is the fiscally responsible, immediate approach. And I can't promise you I won't be coming before you and asking for something to deal with the digital problems that are coming. But right now, this is our need, and we are only asking for what we need right now.
How many hours are you looking at?
We would, all of our other positions are 35 hours. In an ideal world, my entire staff would be 37.5 hours. But right now, so I'm outside of all that, being elected. My APA is 37.5 hours, and that was done to make sure that he was here at 8 o'clock, because the courts sometimes start at 8, to make sure that he's here at 8 to 5. The rest of my staff is 9 to 5. In an ideal world, I would say he's 40 hours a week. Okay. So she handles the time sheets.
I was wondering how you did that.
But in an ideal world, everybody would be 37.5 or more. But I mean, we have to be realistic, and I can't ask for the world from the board. Everybody else is 35 hours. We were expecting that if this is approved, it would be a 35-hour-a-week job.
Okay. But you take what you can get too?
Yes.
As far as, yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Yeah, Mr. Erickson.
Mr. Bison, I see in paragraph 4, in 3 short years, we have tripled the juvenile cases from 50 to 159.
Yes.
How did that happen?
The best answer I can give you is that the world has changed. I think that is a factor, absolutely. I have a school-age child, as most of you know. I've talked to their teachers. I'm involved in the sports program at Hart. I in particular the soccer program. I talk to the teachers all the time. A recurring theme is that there was a significant cultural change during COVID. There is a significant lack of responsibility, it's not just the kids, but community-wide. We are seeing, in my experience, I've been prosecuting for 20 years. These things go in like either a pendulum or a roller coaster, or however you want to describe it. But we're at a point where right now, nobody wants to take responsibility for anything. We have an inordinate amount of people that want trials, which they're entitled to, and I got to be careful how I say this, but 20 years ago when I started, we'd do a pre-trial, and say Mr. Beggs came before me, and we'd be talking about the first thing would be is first thing we do is, hey, do you remember what happened that day? And assuming he does, this is what the police say, and like, all right, the number one thing that the person before me want to know is what's going to happen. And we had back then it was Judge Drake, and he was a very consistent judge, and I could tell from the day I got the police report, I could tell you pretty much what the judge was going to do with it. So I knew where things were going to go, and I could tell the person before me, look, if you admit to driving without a license, the judge is going to give you this fine, and then depending on what the Secretary of State does, this is going to be what's going to happen to your license. And I can tell people, and the vast majority of the time that solved almost all of our disputes. You did have a certain number of people who said, I didn't do it. Okay, well, then you have a trial. Now, it just seems that nobody wants to admit to anything, and it just feels, from my perspective, it feels different. And we're having trials set on issues that we never had trials before, and we've had talks in our office. We can't set a policy that we're just not going to try cases because we're not going to try cases. That's not in the public interest. So we have to try them. So we have to try. We are trying DWSs and no licenses and open intoxes, and so my assistant is busy in district court, and that caseload is exploding, and the kids kind of just caught on. And one of the things that happens is right now none of the kids are doing anything by themselves. So instead of one kid going in and doing a retail fraud, it's 3 kids breaking into an empty house, and the public has a right to be protected. I just finished a big one involving Dave's Party Store, where 2 kids broke in after hours and stole like $4,000 worth of vapes, and we just finished that one up yesterday without a trial, but they admitted to it. It took a lot to get them to admit to what that was on camera, but they ultimately did, and so now that's settled. But yeah, that was 2 or 3 kids, and then that same group with like a little bit of like addendums to who was in the group did other things. We have a couple groups that seem to go around and do things, and they never do it alone. And from what we've talked to our peers, that seems to be a statewide trend. Heather was just at a office managers conference with kind of the same players that I'm going to be meeting with at my prosecutors meeting, and that was a common theme among the office managers of the kids are out of control.
Mr.
Yeah.
Mr. Moy, the other thing that we need to remember is that the age of majority went from the 17th birthday to the 18th birthday too. So people in their 17 years old are juveniles until their 18th birthday, and that's a pivotal time frame in people's lives.
Yes.
When they go to the other. And if we look at our bills that we have right now, look at how much we paid last month for holding juveniles in detention facilities. I see that the sheriff had placed somebody in the Upper Peninsula, and Sault Ste. Marie was the only place they could get a detention facility for them. And it's a budget concern for all of us, but that age moving up to the 18th birthday created.
So I want to be upfront with everybody about everything. We have not detected that the 17-year-old change has affected us yet, but I think it will, because these kids that are with us right now at 14 and 15 are not going to age out of that system, and they're going to be still doing things at 17 and still be juveniles, and so we're going to still have that.
We are paying for incarcerations of, not incarceration, that's the wrong term.
Yeah.
We're paying for detention of them at that 17.
Yes.
Mr. Erickson.
How many outstanding warrants do we have now? Is it still at 850 or 900?
Can I ask the sheriff?
Yes, it's consistent. Yes.
And it may grow.
It may.
It may.
I don't know that the number of outstanding warrants affects this issue. Like the sheriff says, it's a consistent. There's always going to be people out there. They pick them up, we process them. What we're dealing with is a rise in new cases. We're dealing with stuff up front, and that later on we're dealing with it at trial. But this is an upfront issue that my office needs to address, and we need this position.
Mr. Banks.
Two questions, I guess. Do you have a feel or data for caseload that Electric Force brings in?
The Electric Force will generally bring in about somewhere between 30 and 50 felonies each year. To be honest, and I think the sheriff could verify this, a lot of that is it's largely the state police though the sheriff has always had a presence there, the Scent Narcotics team is there. They're picking and choosing their cases because they could probably get triple that if they wanted to.
Yeah.
They are, due to resources, it's my understanding that the festival has never given us an accurate number of who's there, but let's say it's 50,000, that's double the population of the county. So now you've got 2 times the population of the county in a confined area, and it is a unique event. The vast majority of people, I know, I have friends who go. Not my cup of tea. I don't particularly like crowds unless it's for a football game. But so it's not my cup of tea. But I've been once, and it can be a pleasant experience for people. But there is a unique culture that goes with that, and it is a culture that does promote certain illegal activities. And so the police could walk from tent to tent and make quite a day of it if they wanted to and had the resources to do it. But we also have to keep in mind that our courts would then be just clogged.
Right.
So they do make a good effort to target the predators and the people that are causing problems. And it's also my understanding that if somebody is just insistent on committing a crime in front of a police officer, they will do something about it. But for the most part, it's people that are out soliciting selling dangerous drugs or looking to buy very dangerous drugs and are promoting that. The average user is just not going to get our attention. But what actually comes from the festival is somewhere between 30 and 50 felonies, a significant number of misdemeanors, especially when people get some with alcohol, but if they get under the influence of drugs and they're kicked out. We have a lot of trespassing cases. We have some fights, but not many. But every time somebody argues with a police officer, especially in an inappropriate manner, we're talking about possible R&O, which is another felony. I would say that it felt like about maybe one quarter to one half of our cases this year involved in R&O, resisting and opposing a police officer. But a lot of them were just dangerous drugs, people selling.
So those 30 to 50 felonies represent what percentage of your overall
we're doing
annual workload?
Well, in 2012 when I took over, 2013 when I took over, we were doing about 105 felonies, not counting the Forest Festival. So if you bumped up to 150, it was 1/3 of our caseload. Now we're doing more like 220 felonies a year, just because that's what we're seeing. We're not manufacturing them. The police are out there doing their job, and they find these things, or they're reported, and then they have to be dealt with. So we're at about 220, so 50 would be about a quarter of the case.
So
it's
15
significant.
to 25%
Yeah.
of your felony workload is coming from electric force.
It is a significant number.
I guess my line of questioning leads to this, and I know from having to work through ARPA dollars, anytime there's a pot of money sitting there, everybody's got a handout. But Grant Township got $300,000 from electric forest?
No.
No?
Grant Township got $20,000 to fire department service.
Okay.
The electric force is in the village of Rothbury.
Okay,
That's
so
where the money-
the village of Rothbury got
$319,000.
$319,000.
That was negotiated at the time that the previous board annexed into the village of Rothbury. The owners wanted to be annexed into the village of Rothbury because of the liquor license, because Grant Township is a dry township. And they wanted to, and it was negotiated with the electric forest people before the annexation was done.
Yeah. So, and that's what, $3 a ticket or something like that?
It's over $7 now.
$7?
There was an escalating scale, they're going all the way up.
So I guess I sit here and go, this has been brought into our county, and it is MSP is hired. They benefit from providing security and law enforcement inside the gate. We have some increased workload outside the gate, but MSP does an okay job of even handling some of that. But electric force is a statistically significant anomaly in the case of our prosecutor.
So what I've told people in the 10+ years that the festival's been there, it's not even the raw number. 30. I mean, if we had 30 cases and they were spread out over the course of a year, it's like 2 cases a week.
Right.
It's having 30 to 50 cases come to us in 4 days.
Right.
That for us is a bigger problem. And one of the things that we're even talking about is, if you approve this and we get a new position, we got to get somebody hired and trained and ready come that time, because we can't do anything else during that period. That is a very, very busy period for us because it all comes in at once.
Right.
But the warrants don't all get issued on the drugs until the crime lab reports come back.
That is true.
So they are staged out over a certain
Yeah.
period.
Detective
But
Priest has done a great job of staggering that for us and helping us out with that, but it's still a lot of in a short period of time.
But the other thing, and Tim, and I'm not being parochial here, I understand what you say, but there are calls for services and crashes and everything because of the Silver Lake sand dunes too. Are we gonna start looking for money from the Silver Lake sand dunes when our sheriff's department has to go out and cover the crashes out there?
Well, the DNR gives us money. They bought a road patrol vehicle for Golden Township, and our sheriff's deputy mans that vehicle, and we've gotten
Well,
snow patrol money for a snowmobile.
you-
There's been some concession to help cover.
You used to be out there full time.
It's still the goal if we have enough staffing. That's so.
But what I'm saying is, you know, and this discussion was held a lot when Ken Prince was, you know, we looked at the Women's Festival, you know, we looked at how do we do all of them? You know, if we start doing one, how do we do all of them?
Yeah.
Not objecting to it or anything. And Mr. Bison is 100% correct when he talks about the numbers. If you look at the aerial views for the 2008, when they had the Rothbury Music Fest, all of the campsites were at the airport and a little bit of the Price property. Now that is full. All of the Price property is full. The Briggs property is full. The cherry orchards are full. On 80th Avenue, they're on the east side of 80th Avenue, and that 38 acres that Mark Gratifiore sold to them, all of those areas are full, and they still say it's 35 to 40,000 people. You know, just, you know, it's not hard to do the math if you look at the original one.
Right.
So just to wrap up the conversation here, so is there a number for I didn't see a number for the ask, or did I miss that?
We didn't put for the position.
Yeah.
We didn't, but Stacy did put something together for us for DHHS. And I can send that up to.
I
I thought I
believe we're
emailed that
thinking
out.
57. Is it
It
57?
was, I think the total cost was around 50-some thousand.
52.
Not to us, but for the position, and then we could get reimbursed for some of that from the state.
So we're already being partially reimbursed for the victims or for the victim services, and it's a mandate.
Which goes to her position.
Yes,
what she does.
and that's the
23,000.
Yeah, and so that's already coming in. Some counties get reimbursed for a full position. We have asked Tracy Hogan to start that process, and we are asking them to fully reimburse this position. I just can't stand here today and promise you that that's going to be done.
When
It
can
deals
we
with the
know
state.
what they come up with?
We're dealing with the state.
Right. Right. It's true.
And I'm trying to be as forthcoming as I can about this, and I think that's honestly it's the same question we have of when, and we are working on it. We are pushing it. It's actually a big part of what Heather is working on right now, is getting that through. We just can't guarantee what the answer is going to be.
They may tell us.
There is a chance that they will tell us no.
So do we have a feeling where everybody's standing on this? What are you thinking, Mr. Walker?
I think that Mr. Bison and his staff presented a very good case on the need for it. I don't think the electric force causes a shock impact. I think it's a built out, because we have cases with the electric force that are going from, I arrested somebody in the electric force in 2009 and the warrant's still out there. All of those cases aren't cleared up during the same calendar year. I think but it is a concern. It is, but I don't think it's a shock. And I think that they presented a very good case for us to approve the position and the request.
How about you, Mr. Hardy?
I concur.
Okay.
I think it's unfortunate, but, you know, given the workload and the number of hours that they have to put in, and I agree with the digital information that will be coming forth, there's probably gonna be more later on, but I agree with it full time.
Okay. How about Mr. Erickson? What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm troubled about the numbers in the juvenile cases going up, and I surely understand the festival. You know, back when we did Valdez Lakes, the posse loved doing that stuff. It was what they did. Now the state police really enjoy it too, and it is not everyone's cup of tea, but it is what we cry for around here is tourism or commercial venues. You know, it rubs off. So if it's increased your workload and all this digitalization is going to create so many more issues for the office, I agree. Are there any hired guns out there or any people that are ready trained, or are we going to be able to attract someone to this position, or are we going to have to grow our own?
That is always a concern. As the board is aware, you did authorize some ARPA funds to hire a third prosecutor. We have started that process. We posted it in December. We've gotten 2 applications. Now that is a highly specialized position, and it's a little bit different. I would suggest if you look along the lines of your administrative position, that's probably what we can expect as far as applicants. I believe fundamentally there are people who do want to work, but then there are some who don't. And one of our concerns is, will we get applications? What will the quality of the applications be? And then from there, is there somebody that we can work with in our office? We did not enter into this decision to ask for this lightly, because this is going to increase for a short period of time. Now we have to go out and find somebody, and that's a rigorous process that I don't particularly enjoy. And then Heather's going to have to train this new person, and that's a time-consuming thing. So this is not without its cost to us and what we have to do. What you're asking, I think, is the same concern we have. Will we find somebody that wants to do it and can do it? There is not, to my knowledge, anybody ready trained unless they are working in another county and want to come here. And what my office does is highly unique, and I imagine that most of your businesses are like that as well. You know, some people come to with like an education background and can work in a school. Can that person readily come into our office? We don't know yet. It makes a difference, and your businesses are highly unique. Like, just because somebody works, you know, in heating and cooling doesn't mean that they can do what you need them to do. You know, every position is unique, and you want the right person, and you want the right personality, and you want the right fit. Because right now, I think I feel very strongly we have a good office. We have an office that gets along, works together, works hard, and we don't want to bring in a problem. So that's a concern. But to answer the question, yeah, I do believe that there is a pool of candidates out there that we should look at. We'll have to go through the process to find it, but I don't think there's anybody ready that I can go, hey, Mr. So-and-so, Miss So-and-so, you want to come work for me? I don't think there's anybody that's there.
Mr. Baggs, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, certainly the workload's there. There's no doubt there's more kids that needed to be parented when they were 3 years old, and now they're 13 and 14 and 18 and 22, and they're significant issues for the community. So that's it's shocking, but it's not surprising, I guess I would say. You know, I'd love to see a funding source from you know, I'm not asking for $300,000 from Electric Forest, but you know, $100,000 to cover the wages and benefits of an employee would be marvelous. I don't even know if there's a legal way to even ask for that, but the truth is, I believe one of the primary responsibilities of government is to punish those who commit evil acts, and so I want to see that happen more than some of our other services that we offer. So, I don't like to see having to add staff, but it's necessary staff for sure. So, yeah, I'd be in favor of it. Just love to find a way to fund it.
Thank you. So I'll close with this conversation. I totally agree that the times are getting crazy. I mean, things are different than even, like you said, 5 years ago. It's just incredible. I do want to state that the prosecuting attorney's budget was $375,000 in '21. This would bring it to, including the two things today and the assistant prosecuting attorney, $575,000, which is a 53% increase. So we need to know, budgets. I know you get it. Budgets are tight, and I get your position too. And so it is tough. So I struggle with that one a little bit, but if it's needed, it's needed. I agree about the whole maybe Rothbury could pony up a little bit, but that's a different conversation, I think, actually, than what we're talking about.
Mr. Morse, I agree with you, and we have really tried over our time to not increase the budget. And
Yeah,
it's not something I like to see, and it's not something I like to ask for.
Sure. Well, because 219 is 386, 220, or 2020 375, 2021 375, 408, 20 and 22, and then this year, with these potential increases, it's 575. So.
Yes.
But I know you're fiscally sound. I get it. I know that. Yeah, it's just the reality that we need to be aware of too.
Just like buying eggs.
Yeah, and the inflation's hitting everything.
Like chickens.
That's what I want to do, but I can't where I live.
All right, thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Next item on the agenda, Ms. Byard, consideration of the approval of the MDOT block grant for the county airport.
Yes, this is a block grant for administrative expenses in the amount of $32,000. And I'm asking that you approve that today, please.
Does that mean additional staff?
No. No, this was a grant that they already had. They're just asking for a renewal
Overtime.
on that grant. Yeah.
I figured that was.
We had to break the ice here.
Overtime, who's staying late?
All right, next item on the agenda, Ms. Byard, again, consideration of the appointment of the Michigan Works Workforce Development Committee.
This was a carryover from the last board meeting, and I have that on the agenda for approval to appoint Mr. Morse to that committee.
I don't remember talking about that.
I got the email.
You were missing that day and you got volunteered?
Voluntold.
Yes, Mr. Walker.
May I? Does workforce development allow to have an alternate on that?
I don't know if they do or not.
If they allow to have an alternate, I would step in as the alternate in case Mr. Morris can't.
All right, thank you.
If we could split that a little bit.
Yeah.
Between us.
Okay.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that's the last item on the agenda. Any public comment for Personnel and Health and Human Services Committee?
Sure, I'll make a quick comment.
All right, come on up, Mr. Draper.
So, Jim Draper, Newfield Township. The whole electric forest conversation there makes me think, I don't know if you guys can, but tell Village Rothbury that's getting all this money from it, hey, any costs incurred by the county, we need reimbursed for, because the taxpayers are paying for, and the difference between that and say the Silver Lake Sand Dunes is this electric forest is promoting illegal activity, or if they're not promoting it, they're sure giving it a venue. So yeah, just if you could, because we don't want to pay for that, and what we get out of it's a couple weeks of annoyance every summer, Anyway, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Draper. Anybody else? Okay, this meeting is adjourned. Oh, yeah, okay. This meeting is adjourned.
Okay. I'd like to call to order the Finance and Administration Committee. May we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Erickson?
Here.
Mr. Morse?
Here.
Mr. Beggs?
Here.
Mr. Walker?
Here.
Mr. Hardy?
Here. Would ask for approval of the meeting minutes from January 26, 2023.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second Morse?
Motion by Beggs, second by Morris. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carried. Are there any changes to the agenda? Hearing none, I'll ask for approval of the agenda.
I'll make that motion, Morse?
Support Walker.
Motion by Mr. Morris and a second by Mr. Walker. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carried. Is there any public comment at this time for Finance and Administration Committee? Okay, hearing none, we will move on. Administrative Briard, consideration of removal of the boats, campers, trailers, cardboard, and tires.
So we requested a quote from American Classic for removal of the items that were listed there. The quote is in your packet, and I'm asking that the board approve that quote today so that we can get those removed. And just to on further discussion with that, if we do enter into a contract with American Classic to take that on, that will be part of their responsibility once that's taken on. So this would be this cost now, but we wouldn't be taking that on after if they do take that over. And you're not allowing for boats, campers, and all that stuff from this point forward until we enter into a contract with them. If we do enter into a contract with them, because you didn't have it on the list of items, you removed that. So that would take care of that right now.
Mr. Hardy?
Yes.
I never realized when we started this with American Classic and starting going forward, how much time it was going to take out of the administrator's office and how much time it was going to take for the chair to go forward with this. It seemed like it was on a daily basis, and this is one of those things that I think we need to get off the table and get removed, because every time we turn around, something else is popping up and something else is going, and it's like we can't move forward until we get our housekeeping done ourselves.
Sure. 20
and
boats.
we started it. Let me give you a simple example. We adopted the fee structure last time. Tracy sent the fee structure out to Mr. Gardner
From American Classic.
from American Classic, and he changed it and sent it back on what he wanted it to be. And my comment to the administrator was, that was adopted by the board, and he didn't like some of the fees, like for the individual garbage bags, until the administrator pointed out that we have the same fee structure on these that you're charging your company over at Croton Township. But I'm finding that it's one of those things that we need to move forward with, but you have to watch everything that's going on.
Sure.
And you have to be very careful. And in order for us to move forward on all of this, they didn't, let me give you another example. They didn't want to deal with the boats, and they didn't want to deal with those things because they're going to accept them if they open that up out there. Too bad. We're going to have our end cleaned up, and we're not. And they didn't like that we weren't going to accept them anymore. Too bad. We're not accepting them, we're cleaning it up. Because if some reason we don't go forward, we want that stuff gone.
Sure.
And we don't want to do it anymore. So it's an everyday thing, but from my perspective, in order to move forward, I don't like spending the $6,400. We certainly didn't get paid enough of disposal fees of those things to cover that cost, but I think we do need to move forward with it, and it is moving forward with Lola was applying for the 2 different grants. We are moving forward, even if it appears we don't, but we need to keep it going.
And I think in your packet, everybody, the boats, campers, and trailers was $5,500. $400 was for the cardboard, bale cardboard, and $500 tires for a total of $6,400.
And I do know that the value of recycled cardboard has drastically dropped.
Yeah.
Because I have a friend who is a buyer for that type of stuff, guy I used to work with. And they said they're not even buying right now.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions, comments?
I think the site certainly needs cleaned up of, you know, probably the stuff that's there has been there too long already.
Right.
And so, whether it's tires or boats or campers, we need a clean house no matter what we do moving forward.
Right.
I absolutely concur with you, Mr. Banks.
Yep.
Walk back there and you'll,
Yeah.
and you'll agree.
All right, moving on. Ms. Biard, Administrator's review of selected claims for payment. Dan, Administrator's report.
Okay, the claims for payment have been included in your packet. Does anybody have any questions with those? If not, my administrator's report is included in the packet as well, but I do have a few other things that I wanted to bring up. Amy Contreras reached out to me yesterday and asked about a replacement computer for the weather computer out at the airport. The cost of that is going to be $1,950, and I just wanted to let you know that I'll be asking for that at our next meeting so that we can get that replaced. It's pretty old. I guess they're using Windows XP on that computer, so it's pretty dated. And that is with the new software and everything.
Can't Kurt just write a program to update that thing for us?
Yeah.
Probably replace it with an old Android phone or.
Right.
Mr. Hardy, is there a reason we can't just approve that at this meeting?
I'm fine with that if you want to do a quick resolution or
Motion?
Can we just do a motion?
Yes,
Yeah.
you can do that.
I agree.
All right.
That's everybody else.
Just an update on the administrative assistant accounts payable position. We completed interviews yesterday. I don't know where Stacy is with contacting the people that we interviewed, but we have selected someone, and we're hoping to have that person start 2 weeks from Monday, so we can get them trained and
Glad you found someone.
Yes, yes. We were pretty excited. I think six resumes. So
don't let the prosecutor's office steal her. Or him.
Yeah. So that's the other thing too. I reached out to Michigan Works, and they did a blast of our job description and put it out on Facebook and stuff too. So I think that might have helped as well.
And I want to make the same comment that I made with the administrator. You know, excuse me. That I was very happy to see that everybody in the administrator's office, being that there were only 3 people in there, that everybody was involved, at least to sit in on the interviews to see who the new person was going to be working in that small office.
Good.
I'm glad it was done with the group there. So.
Well, it's important to have your staff agree to the person.
I got to work with them as well.
Exactly, exactly.
Exactly what I said, Tim.
Yeah. So, the plumbing and mechanical position. It's really funny because I know more about plumbing and mechanical than I ever knew before. So, we have started accepting applications for that position. There are certain criteria that they have to have in order for us to get them licensed to be an inspector, and we have all that criteria in writing from the state, so that's what we're looking for.
We have a plumbing, somebody doing it part-time now. Do we have anybody doing the mechanical?
We have someone that's doing both.
Oh, he's doing both?
Yes, he's doing both right now. So,
That's, when does that, I know we passed was 30 days, but
30 days. That's what we have.
is he willing to go?
That may have to be extended.
Yeah, we may have to.
Okay.
Yeah. And the other thing that I've also found with some of the people that have been calling is that some people may have the plumbing, but they don't have the mechanical piece, so.
That may be split.
Yeah, so we may have to split that position, so, but I'll keep you posted on that.
Mr. Hardy?
Yes.
May I make just a statement on this, and I know this is a difficult thing for all of us to consider. When the permits are taken out at that office, the inspector who's going to be doing those inspections is paid at the time those permits are taken out. It's very, very unfortunate, and I sympathize for the family and the children of the person who passed away. We have already paid those wages for the majority of these inspections to be done. With that being said, when we move forward on the proposed policy on administrative fees, those administrative fees are going to have to pay the new inspector coming in to do those inspections. We cannot, it would be unthinkable to consider going back and asking for reimbursement on those fees that have already been paid. So just, are you following what I'm saying
Right,
here?
yeah.
It just food for thought for the board members as we move forward.
Okay. And
Yeah,
go ahead.
as much as I hated to say that, it needs to be out.
Sure. Yeah.
Just one last thing, Paul mentioned the ARPA monies. I had provided him an updated sheet. I have since updated that worksheet for the auditors, and the total amount remaining is $502,258. However, at the beginning of January, Dr. Sobey had done a journal entry to move, I think it was like $735,000 into the general fund to cover some of the expenses. Those were supposed to come from the ARPA funds that had already been approved by the Board of Commissioners.
Correct.
So, just for example, you had an economic development person, Mr. Brutch, who had been doing economic development, and the board decided to go in a different direction, and so we only paid him for a portion of that time. So part of that money had already been transferred into the general fund, so that didn't get used. So it has been moved into the general fund, so that I'm just saying that those monies are not dedicated. So the funds that were not dedicated, that were moved, were added to that $502,000, and it brings it to $555,072. That's what you have remaining.
Would you please print that in color for all of us
Mm-hmm.
today, before our meeting, 11?
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. That's all I have.
That's it. All right. Moving on. Any public comment at this time for Finance and Administration Committee? Hearing none, I will adjourn the Finance and Administration Committee, and we will take a short break.
Schramm's Dried Cinnamon.
Sounds like our waterproofing might get a good test today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No kidding.
Almost that.